Coffee, Cows, and Crops is produced by the Peace Country Beef and Forage Association and hosted by Extension Coordinator Johanna Murray. On this podcast, we discuss management practices and research results with scientists, ranchers, researchers, and farmers. We strive to share innovative information and farming practices supported by sound science and practical wisdom. So grab a cup of coffee and let's get learning. All right, hi everybody. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Coffee, Cows, and Crops. I'm Johanna, and today we're going to talk to the team from Young Agrarians. So I'm really excited to talk to these ladies today because they do an excellent job making agriculture accessible to people who didn't grow up on farms or who aren't as familiar with agricultural practices. But before we get into that, ladies, I'll get you to introduce yourselves, maybe where you're from and what brought you to Young Agrarians. And I'll pick on Colby to start.
Well, thanks, Johanna. I'm Colby Peterson, and I'm the Apprenticeship Coordinator in Alberta for the Young Agrarians Prairie Apprenticeship Program. And I'm originally from Beaver Lodge, Alberta, but have moved closer to Dawson Creek on the BC side and am farming there. I was introduced to Young Agrarians when I met Dana. I was volunteering at an Organic Alberta conference because I wanted to get into farming and I didn't know really where to start. So I thought I'd go to a conference and meet a whole bunch of farmers. And I met Dana there and we kept in touch after that. And eventually a job opportunity came up to work with the apprenticeship program and I leapt at that opportunity and I'm so glad I did. And they haven't been able to get rid of me since.
Awesome. Dana, we'll get you to go next.
Thanks, Johanna. I'm Dana Penrise. I am the YA Prairies Program Manager, and I live at Shoal Lake, Manitoba, but I moved out here a couple years ago. So I actually started Young Agrarians in Alberta when I was living there. And what got me into it was I went to BC for a National Farmers Union youth event. And as part of that, we went to a Young Agrarians mixer that they were hosting out there and just seeing their event and seeing the connections that were being made. And there was just lots of young farmers who were just starting out with no farming background. And, you know, they were struggling with questions of like, how do I get my seed in the ground kind of thing? Or how do I drive a tractor? Or all kinds of questions like that. I just kind of had this feeling of like, oh, these are my people. And so that's how I got hooked into it. And after that, myself and a few farmer volunteers around Red Deer helped to bring the program out to Alberta. So I've been with it ever since.
Right on. And last but not least, Alex.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Polwiki, and I am the e-learning coordinator for Young Agrarians. I am one of those people who don't really know how to drive a tractor that Dana was just talking about. So I grew up in the city and kind of came to farming and Young Agrarians accidentally, which is pretty fun. I started volunteering at a community garden, kind of just as a favor to a friend, and totally fell in love with the idea of being able to grow food, be in community, eat delicious food, but also make a positive impact on a lot of the negative environmental trends that we're hearing about in the news so much these days. So that was just a really big eye-opening experience. And I've just kind of dove into the farming world since then. Started out organizing a lot of events with Young Agrarians in Central Alberta. And now we've kind of been expanding our e-learning or our online learning programs. So I've been kind of working towards that in the last couple of months, which has been very exciting.
So for anybody who's unfamiliar with Young Agrarians, can you give me a quick summary of what you do, what Young Agrarians is, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. So Young Agrarians, our kind of tagline is a farmer to farmer network. So we're aiming to grow the next generation of farmers. And what that kind of means for the way we run our programs is that We at Young Agrarians are by no means the experts on how to farm. We don't actually teach anybody how to drive a tractor or anything like that, because we recognize that all that expertise and all that amazing knowledge is in the network of farmers that are part of Young Agrarians. So we really focus on bringing together new farmers, experienced farmers, people who are young, people who are old, people who are in the middle, and kind of get this exchange of ideas and skill sharing really going, because that's how people learn well. And we realize that that's where all the knowledge is. It's in the community. So yeah, we have been in Alberta now for how many years now? 5 years, Dana?
We've been in Alberta since 2015, so 6.
So 6 years now. And we've slowly been growing the number of people that are part of the network. And we really hope to kind of reach people who maybe are interested in farming but don't know how to start. So a lot of those folks are coming from urban backgrounds, first generation farmers, and they don't necessarily have the skills to be able to produce food or necessarily the skills to run a business, but they have this incredible passion and drive to feed their communities and to build relationships with each other.
Awesome. So on the topic of community building and communications, how did you guys start communicating with, how'd you start building your network of farmers and that sort of stuff?
So in BC, it really started where there was this recognition that there was this need for almost like social learning space for new farmers, where, there was, especially those first generation farmers, there wasn't a lot of ways for them to kind of get integrated into the rural or farming community. And so, the premise of it really just started with like farm tours and potlucks, like the idea that people just want to get out on the land, share food with each other, and build relationships. And so that's kind of been the organizing model all along, and actually really still is. I think like some of the, in starting out Young Agrarians, when the founder Sarah Dent and Sean Dory did in BC, some of it came from just having like really good branding. I think like making farming look sexy was a big part of it, and that also bringing like a lot of kind of like diversity in backgrounds. Like we're seeing all kinds of people interested in farming. We typically think of like the next generation of farmers as the farm kids of current farmers, but the demographics of that are really changing. So we did a survey in 2015 with the National Farmers Union and the University of Manitoba, and 68% of the respondents didn't come from a farming background. So it really shows that there's this huge wave of people who are interested in getting into it. So I think that imagery of like, let's make the visuals that we're putting out there as Young Agrarians reflective of that community of people getting into it. Lots of them are women, and we're also seeing more and more people of color getting into farming as well, which is really exciting. So some of that is like our communication strategy, but it's also just like talking to people, I think, at the right kind of level, like talking at that level of like, what is a heifer? Like that's a strange word to most people. And making it comfortable for people to be able to ask those kinds of questions and be like, what is that? And usually in a lot of our events and things like that, there's lots of people in the room asking the same kinds of questions. So it's really open and inviting that in that kind of way.
Yeah, I can kind of add in a bit. I think that kind of grassroots approach of just like talking to people and making things normal, like acknowledging that you're not the only crazy one that wants to farm. Like oftentimes people are coming from families and their parents are like, you want to what? Like it's so strange. So just normalizing that. But then I think what's ended up being really helpful for a lot of people is our social media presence. So within Young Agrarians, there's a communications person who kind of manages the social media, but having that space where people can connect from very from areas that are very dispersed, geographically far apart, is really important, I think, because you can find people, you know, that look like you farming on Instagram. Like that's I think really big for a lot of people, especially in kind of that young farmer scene, where social media is a big part of people's lives. But yeah, connecting over these big geographies is something that I think we need to think about.
Yeah, and I'll add that our events are really geared towards the new farmer, and so the language is friendly to the new farmer. You know, and even I should say the old farmer, that it's a very community oriented and intergenerational space. And so we get people saying, well, I'm a new farmer, but I'm not young. Is that okay? And we always just say, well, whether you're young or young at heart, this is for you and you're welcome and come as you are. And definitely, as Dana was saying, like the food is a draw. The food is the way to everybody's heart. And, you know, we have these like epic potlucks that draw people in, you know, maybe who didn't come for the educational portion of the event, but just want to meet people and talk to people and network and share some space and time around the potluck, which is a really beautiful way to come together as a community.
I think the other thing I'll add too is that it's also not like, we're also really trying to draw an audience that's just curious about farming. Like they might not know that they want to become farmers yet. So we always kind of, sometimes we use the tagline, I guess, farmers and food lovers. Because yeah, we want to catch those people that are like curious and get them engaged into the network. And, you know, they might not know that they want to farm yet, but soon they'll discover that farming's really cool. And, you know, then they have a friend, they've come there and meet a friend that they can, you know, start to explore what would farming actually mean for me. You know, is it something I want to pursue? Do I want to go work on another person's farm and try it out first? Like a lot of our work is just passing on opportunities like that to people. It's like, okay, you're interested. Now what do you need? Do you need experience? Do you need, you know, some business acumen? Do you need access to land? Those kinds of things. So really trying to like meet people where their challenge or their need really is at.
Awesome. And that really feeds into my main question, which is there's a big push in like the agriculture community in general to try and connect and tell our story a little bit to the non-farming population, which is ever growing, right? So are there other things that you find make your social media or your events more accessible to those people who are curious?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really what we're trying to do is really, even if people aren't interested in farming, what we're finding is that like young people are so motivated by like environment and doing good for the community. And I think it's based on those values and motivations that they're interested in what we're doing. So, you know, I think often we'll post something that's like about, you know, like food security or food sovereignty and access to, like a story about, you know, people working to grow food for their community. And that just like interests everybody, not just farmers. Yeah, that's kind of where my mind goes with that question, is like everybody is connected to food. So it's just about making it interesting to them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, maybe to build on that, just thinking about how the work, like it's very easy perhaps when you're on a farm to kind of get bogged down by the details of, you know, how many pounds of alfalfa needs to go where and like all that stuff. But like really what you're doing is like feeding people and stewarding the land, and like all these really beautiful things that resonate with a lot of people. So I think being able to connect to, you know, zooming out a little bit of like, what is your farm doing, if you were to like, yeah, really think about it in terms of the ecosystems and the communities that it's a part of, and all that stuff. So being able to share that message and bring your story as like an example of ways that we can work towards all these things that people are really passionate about right now, and hopefully continue to be for a long time.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think along with that, and this is something that has really helped me on the farm that I'm living and working on, is Young Agrarians helps me take that zoomed out approach more often, and helps remind me that yes, this day to day is part of a larger, what I really feel is as a movement, and that I'm a part of something that's larger, and that it's moving towards hopefully a better future. And I think that's something a lot of the young people involved in Young Agrarians or the apprenticeship program, the community in general, whether they are farming or not, needs to be reminded of, that there's this momentum that we're going forward to something better, and that they're a part of it, and that they're a needed part of it, and that we're working, sometimes it might feel like we're working alone, but we really are working together in the larger community.
Right. And is there a difference you notice with which audiences you reach through different communications and that sort of stuff?
We definitely have been strategic about developing a very large, and well, it's grown to be a very large social media platform. So that's where most people find out about us. I think where people are now, like on social media, is kind of an interesting thing. Like, we aren't on TikTok, but my partner Ted, he just got onto TikTok and he's like obsessed with it. But, like kind of trying to be where people are at is a big part of it. And with our mentors, we found a lot of our mentors actually through our partnership with Organic Alberta. So we intentionally started Young Agrarians with Organic Alberta because we knew that that's a big network of not just organic, but ecological regenerative farmers in Alberta. And that's who we really, wanted to be connecting people with. That's where a lot of the exciting opportunities are to learn about farming. One among many organizations, like PCBFA would be one of them too. Yeah, and I mean, we spend a lot of time on the phone with our mentors, and then that kind of thing. Colby spends a lot of time on the phone with them, and then the young folks, they're texting, and I'm making myself sound really old. This question, but yeah, I don't know. I actually really believe that like it's about kind of trying to develop those relationships over time. So we kind of pull them in through the social media network, but then try and engage them in a bunch of different ways through events, like getting to meet with people face to face, getting them comfortable talking on the phone and stuff like that. And just check, like we're just constantly checking in with like, how's our network doing, talking to different people about what their challenges are this year, that kind of thing.
I'll add a little bit to that. I mean, and I'm gonna sound old with this comment too, but and this is maybe a little more program specific rather than, I mean, Dana's kind of referring to like the net that we catch people, especially the people curious about farming. And often that is a pull from social media, which will then maybe lead them to the website. And then they'll kind of go through all the different programs and all the avenues that, some of their questions could be answered by going down. And once they do come to an event, I really think the sense of community is a pretty strong binding force for a lot of these new and young and aspiring farmers, and that they maybe have just found somewhere where they feel a little less lost, or at least if they're still feeling very lost, they're lost in community. And it's kind of a reassuring thing that other people are at the same stage, and kind of going down that learning journey together. And And, you know, I think a lot of the success of our programs too has been word of mouth and just people referring other people. And I've seen that a lot through the apprenticeship program is new apprentices are often referred to by former, you know, alumni from the program. We also have, as far as audience and reach of audience, like, you know, Alex being interviewed by every single news media outlet really did reach a large audience, and that was a really beautiful thing for Young Agrarians to see is all these people, you know, watching the news and coming through us that way.
Yeah, I was gonna add to that there that yeah, don't knock the like old school media too of, you know, radio interviews and newspaper articles, especially now with like online newspapers. Your reach can go very far. So if you, yeah, like in our case, we were advertising a new program called the Business Boot Camp, and it just got a lot of traction in various media outlets, and it was an incredible moment of just seeing all these people, you know, who are stuck in their cars driving in rush hour, listening to the radio, being like, yeah, I do want to become a farmer. Like, that's pretty cool. And they reached out and now they're part of the network, and they're like, this was amazing, or this was so much fun, or I'm so glad to have found you, like all these beautiful things. So it's, yeah, it's cool to see how the people are out there. It's just a matter of kind of finding them. And you never know how that might happen, I guess.
Awesome. So I know you guys you're aiming to bridge that gap between wanting to farm or being curious about farming or ranching and then transitioning to actually farming or ranching. So Dana, maybe I'll get you to talk about how your apprenticeship program started and what it sort of looked like to begin with.
Sure, for sure. Yeah, so the apprenticeship program kind of has some history to it because it was actually before Young Agrarians started in Alberta. I was doing a research project on new farmers in the prairies, and I found that it was kind of like, where are the new farmers getting trained? And what I found was that many of them had gone either to Ontario or BC to do an apprenticeship program because that's where most of the apprenticeships were. And my question was like, how can we keep people on the prairies and also train them in the kind of ecology and the kind of farming that we're doing here? You know, the scale is a lot different, and the type of farming is different. Like, how do we get somebody who can manage a herd of cattle versus, you know, vegetable gardening, right? And I ended up actually looking to the States. I went to a conference in New Mexico called the Quivira Coalition. And they had an apprenticeship program running down there that when I found it, I was like, this is what we need. Because the apprentices were working on ranches, working on like big tree farms and like dairies and all kinds of stuff. And when I talked to them, their success rate was just really good. You know, they'd had so many apprentices and it was like 95% of them or something were still working on farms. And so we basically just brought the Quivira Coalition, they call it the New Apprenticeship Program. We just brought their program up to Canada. They were really great to kind of mentor us through how to set up our program and provided some materials and stuff for us to kind of get started. And yeah, we just piloted a program in Alberta. I can't remember how many farms we started off with in the first year. I think it was like 6 or 7. And yeah, worked with our network in terms of like who, some farms had kind of had previous programs, like they'd had interns or woofers on their place. So they kind of knew what it was going to be like. We really wanted to push towards like something that was a little bit beyond an internship, because I kind of think of an internship as like, you know, a few months kind of thing. You know, this is for people who they're usually like 6 to 8 months kind of lengths, give them kind of more of the seasonality of the farm, and have a little bit more commitment to the learning aspect of it, of, actually developing those skills of regenerative farming and, getting more experience of not just kind of weeding the garden for a couple weeks. It's like they might end up doing it for months or whatever. So yeah, that's that's kind of how it started. And really what I was seeing is that we kind of had these like new people curious about farming from a non-farming background. And then I also was we still get lots of calls from people who have a farm but don't have a successor. And so the apprenticeship program in a way is like trying to fill that gap so that we are training apprentices, training skilled people who can take over those kinds of opportunities and work with existing farmers who are ready to kind of transition their farm to somebody else. And so the apprenticeship program is kind of trying to, like get them trained up and ready to be able to take on that opportunity.
All right. And what does the apprenticeship program look like now? I think Colby, you wanted to answer that one.
Yeah, sure. So, well, like Dana said, the sort of big, bold goal is that these will be the future farmers of the prairies, and that this will be, whether they're dipping their toe into farming for the first time, or maybe they have a few of those shorter term experiences under their belt, that this program will really be a kind of a launching pad for them to, really start their farm, or to take on the management of a farm, or to partner with existing farmers to make those transitions, as there are going to be so many of them in the next decade. So we were hoping to scale up the program a little bit, and it was really exciting. We got the funding this year to make the Alberta Apprenticeship Program a prairie-wide apprenticeship program. So, last year in Alberta, we had 8 mentors, and now this year between the provinces, we have 23. So it was a big, like all these wonderful, skilled farmers are stepping up to fill that mentor role and to really help educate this new generation of farmers, and create these kind of mentor communities across the prairies where they get to learn together and share their, their pearls of wisdom with each other and with the apprentices. And so, most of these farms will be starting their apprenticeships come mid-April and beginning of May, and most of them will run through to, around October, November. Some of them are open and willing to have apprentices stay year round, and some of them are hoping their apprentices might even start their own business enterprises right on their farms. So it is kind of we're moving these aspiring farmers along their farming pathway to becoming farmers. We have, pandemics pending, we have normally gatherings with the apprentices on each other's farms. They get to visit one another's farms and have tours and potlucks there and share learning days. We have more of an online curriculum or opportunities, supplemental learning opportunities for both mentors and apprentices in the programs now. So, we're trying to develop one another as, cultivate better humans as well as better soils and farms. And ideally this will, we'll see a large retention of people who want to stay in the farming sector and the Young Agrarians community.
Awesome. Like that, growing better people is always exciting.
Our last couple of years, we've really worked more on helping to provide training for the mentors. They're providing a lot of expertise and learning and coaching and guiding for that next generation. And so helping them to become better mentors has been one of our priorities lately. We just rely on them so much for that intergenerational knowledge. Not every farmer is a great teacher, right? But those that are really great teachers are really important to growing that next generation of farmers.
Yeah, I would say that's actually it's something that almost every apprentice has said coming out of the program is the most valuable thing, really. And I mean, aside from like on the ground learning day in and day out, is the community of people that they have come to know, and the support that they get from that community. So that's a really exciting thing for us to hear, knowing that they feel well supported for their next steps.
Yeah. And I would add too that the types of farming that we have in our apprenticeship program is really diverse. So we have market gardens, we have cattle farms, we have grain farms, we have bison farms. It's there's kind of something for everybody. And the idea of like having each other go and see each other's farms is that they both learn like just a bunch of different kinds of ways of farming and different, get exposed to all that different kind of stuff. But it's also about growing the network of mentors for the group as a whole. So, we really see that in the alumni from our apprenticeship program is they might go work at another mentor farm, or they might, they just all of a sudden they just have all of these connections in the regenerative ag sector that once they actually go to start farming or to figure out their next step, they have all these great resources and people that they can rely on to figure out, oh, should I do this or should I do that? They've got somebody they can phone up and figure it out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I will maybe just add about those next steps, like kind of the importance and enormity of the kind of task of getting more people into farming. Because I think the stat is something like in the next 10 years, 75% of the land in Canada will change hands. And so that's just an incredible amount of land. Right now, there aren't really enough young farmers to be filling those shoes, those big shoes that are going to be left behind. So yeah, I guess just the importance of having a strong community to keep people supported as they kind of go into this kind of vocation of farming that they're pursuing.
Definitely. All right. I think on that note, the importance of getting young people involved to keep agriculture going. I think on that note, are there any resources and websites or any of that sort of stuff that you'd like to plug before we sign off?
Sure. I think Alex needs to plug the boot camp.
Plug Alex.
Okay, I will plug away. So I guess one kind of program that's new in the Young Agrarians world that we're really excited about is the Business Boot Camp. And so this program is an online program, so you can join from wherever you're at. And we've had people join from all across the country and even abroad now, which is pretty fun. But it's basically a program for helping people to kind of build their business plan and generally business skills around farming. So we're finding that there's kind of, two aspects of farming. There's the production side of actually being able to grow things and produce beautiful, high quality food. But then there's also the ability to plan for how to do those things into the future, plan for how to sell them, plan how to finance all these things. And so the Business Bootcamp is basically meant to help people work on that. And that's also just a really growing community of people who are ready to jump into farming, start their own farm business, and are supporting each other in that journey. So we just ran 3 cohorts of the Business Bootcamp this winter, and we're going to be starting more Business Bootcamps in the fall once the craziness of summer dies down.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting program. So in those 3 cohorts, we had 90 people go through it. So often people are asking, how big is, where are the new farmers? How many of them are there out there? And I think that's a really good stat on, it just shows that there are people out there interested doing it. And we're really excited to offer that one again in the fall. And the other thing that I wanted to share is that we just launched our a land access guide for Alberta. So one of the big challenges for new farmers is how to access land, and, what are all the options available? Often we just immediately think that you have to buy the farm, right? But that's not always the case. And I think we're going to see more and more kind of leasing and land sharing opportunities happening. So that document is a 60-page document that covers all kinds of tips and case stories, and it's got sample leases and all kinds of really great resources in it for people who are ready to find a piece of land. So we're just getting into more kind of work around the land access issue, which is really exciting.
I will also add another Young Agrarians thing. The BC team has put together a transition toolkit for non-family farm transfer. And any templates in it would probably be British Columbia specific, but most of the information is completely applicable for anywhere. And especially those trying to move forward in a very complex journey of what farm transition looks like, and especially if it's out of family. And perhaps anybody, I don't know if you have any listeners from the States or who might be planning on, endeavoring on a farming journey there, but Dana referenced the Quivira Coalition's program. It's called the New Agrarian Program. And they have also expanded their apprenticeship they've included many, many more states and have a lot more mentor farms across the US that people might be interested in learning more about.
And kind of, I guess, another piece around the land access guide is that it's for people seeking land, but also if you have land that you want to offer and, you're toying with the idea of looking at, out of family transition or something kind of longer scale like that, having that, kind of land access piece, bringing new people onto the farm, testing those relationships, growing those relationships, that document can kind of help in the early stages of that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so if anybody's interested in anything that the gals just mentioned, I'll be putting links to their website and some of that other stuff in the description of the podcast, so you can scroll down and have a look. And I think other than that, I think we're just about out of time. So with that, we will call it there.
That was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Johanna. We really appreciate it.
Peace Country Beef and Forage Association is a research and extension group based out of Fairview, Alberta. Our mission is to help producers thrive in an agricultural system that is profitable, regenerative, and attractive to future generations. To learn more about what we do and see the results of our research trials or our archive of newsletters and fact sheets, check out our website at peacecountrybeef.ca. Want to get in touch? Have a burning question or a topic suggestion? Send us a message on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Thanks for listening.